Kyle, come on up.
What's up, everybody? How you guys doing? I just wanted to, share with you guys how blessed I feel to be a part of this family. And so something happened in Jillian's family a couple weeks ago. There's an emergency in Minnesota, and we had to buy a last-minute plane ticket out to Minnesota. And it was just awesome because some of you guys heard about that and felt that hurt, I guess, and really wanted to support us in that. And so there are some people here from the church that supported us financially to help buy this last minute ticket because it wasn't cheap. And it's amazing to see that actually happen. We've been talking about family on mission and to actually feel it. And I mean, I was the recipient, but it's just amazing. I can't begin to explain how honored I am to call you guys my brothers and my sisters. And I mean, this goes beyond even elements. A couple years ago when I was living in Denver even, and I barely even knew Eric and Leila, they helped me out with some money to pay for rent because I just lost my job. And this is just the quality of people that we have in this room is amazing. And I just wanted to share that with you guys. Continue to be there for each other and lean into oikos as we help each other out. Love you guys.
Awesome. We love Kyle. So last week, Robert shared about another testimony of someone giving physical capital, so time, right? And tonight we heard testimony of people giving financial capital, which is amazing. So over the weeks, we just want to hear more and more testimonies of how we're being a family to each other in all those different areas. Now, as we talk about family on mission, next week will be our last week to talk about this for a little bit. Can't help but think about our family, our children, and kind of our biological family around us. And I have to say, other than the deep, deep fear that most parents have that something horrible is going to happen to one of their kids, I think the other greatest fear that most parents have is that their kids are going to grow up to be spoiled, entitled brats. Holla? Okay, most of us are and all the rest of you are afraid our children will be that too because you have to live with them, right? That is a massive fear. So I was reading this blog on kids being entitled, and this is how it starts. Whatever. Sigh. Fine. Roll of the eyes. Dad, you've got to take me to soccer. Mom, there's nothing good to eat in this house. I have that already. Sound familiar? We live in a world where our children feel that they're stars, even if only on YouTube. 30% of college students, listen to this, polled, feel that they deserve at least a B just for showing up for class. Our children feel entitled, and with this attitude, they grow arrogant. Did you ever drive a carpool and realize that the kids just slammed the door shut without even a thank you? Did you ever hold a door open in school and watch children saunter through without a backwards glance? Did you ever sit in a restaurant or airplane and watch children being served? What about a thank you or appreciative words given then? Don't hold your breath. That's that little snippet. I mean, honestly, people like scary movies. I don't personally like scary movies, but if you like the thrill of scary, scary things, go to YouTube and search these words together: super nanny and kids throwing public tantrums, and it will give you nightmares. Okay, I'm just saying. I watched some clips yesterday, and I was like, whoa, there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of entitlement. There's a lot of feeling that we deserve things. According to World Book Dictionary, an entitled person is one who thinks they have a right to ask for or get something. The important part of this definition is the word right. There's no concept or understanding that the right is earned. So we should be able to get something just because we want it. We feel like we should have it. Why again? Nobody can really tell us why we should actually have it. Because people around the world work harder than most of us, and they don't have the things we have. So, consistently, Eric says this. If one of the kids say, "That's mine," oh my goodness, here we go. No, nothing belongs to you. Everything in this house belongs to mommy and me, and we're just letting you have it. I mean, we've found ways to keep ingraining into our children, nothing is yours. And you don't deserve anything. You don't deserve this house. We don't either. None of us deserve it. It's actually God's, and he's loaned it to us, and he expects us to be good with it. We don't deserve anything. Nothing is a right. You know what I mean? But when we start to feel like we should have things because we have rights, then we're like 30% of college students polled who think that they should get an above average grade because they put on something and moved their body to a different location. That's the way they earned a B or above. At least a B, actually, is what it says. I mean, unbelievable. That's when we start to think we deserve something, we should have something. That's called entitlement. Now, how do we get to this place? How do we get to this place? And we're talking about family. So when we're talking about spoiled brat kids, that can be us, right? I mean, we're not like toddlers and preschoolers, but we are spiritually, we're growing up, right? And it doesn't take that much to see, you can see a toddler pitch a fit, and honestly, Chase is cute, you know what I'm saying? So I'd rather see it from him than a 55-year-old who didn't get what they wanted in line somewhere. Starbucks didn't have the drink that they wanted anymore because they stopped doing it over the... You know what I mean? Like, you see entitlement everywhere. It's not just little ones. I mean, at least Chase can get away with it for another year. Man, some of us just can't get away with that. Well, let me remind you of invitation and challenge. This is how it happens, that we consistently push ourselves or push each other to one thing or the other. So invitation, remember, is love, grace, spending time with someone, cultivating relationship with someone, forgiveness, all that covenant side of building a relationship that lets us know we're safe, we're valued, we're worthy of love. Jesus was really good at this, right? Oozed invitation. So much that children would run up to him, which does not apply to every single person who walks around, right? That's how approachable he was. Then challenge is the truth, the accountability. Sometimes it means confrontation. It often means setting boundaries, which is like awkward, right? To say like, no, you just crossed that one. Go back. We're not doing that. Oh, we're fine as long as this is what's happening. Let me just define it for you. That's uncomfortable. That's challenge. It doesn't have to be nasty, confrontational argument, right? It's just a place where we let each other know where we are and where we belong. It's an invitation to grow that is often uncomfortable. That's what challenge is. And Jesus also did this really, really well. So invitation says, I understand where you are today and I accept you. It's beautiful, right? And challenge says, but I also understand you don't want to be in that same place tomorrow, so let me help you get to that other place. If we have all challenge and no invitation, then we're constantly pushing ourselves or each other to do better, to do more, to be something else, without the acceptance of who we are now. We need both, right? But if we are just constantly accepting ourselves and each other as we are today with no challenge, and this is a mantra, I feel like, in our culture, and especially here, you do you, right? You do you. That means there's no judgment, which also means I'm never going to get you to move. I'm never going to do the uncomfortable thing, which is sometimes to say, but the you that you are right this second is not who you want to be in a year. I love it when people around me accept me for who I am and say, I love you, Leila, just today, just because you are who you are. But I don't want to be the same person in a year. I don't want to be the same person in a month. I don't want to be the same person tomorrow. I want to be different. I want to be more Christ-like. And I need not only God, but all of you to challenge me to do that, okay? That's invitation challenge. So I'm going to go ahead and put up that matrix that shows us those things. Just want to remind you of what happens when we're low in one or the other, all right? But I want to layer on top of these kind of some family language. Because we're talking about family, we're talking about spoiled brats, right? And we don't want to be there. So this is what happens when we're in that low invitation, low challenge quadrant that's boring. That means nothing's happening. We're not challenged to do anything else. We're also not loved or really shown any attention or anything like that. You could say that parents in this quadrant are neglectful. That means you're not getting anything out of this deal. And if you think about it, you might have been this child, or you might know someone who was this child, where there was really nothing happening at all. You just kind of found your own way. But nobody was guiding you through high invitation, high challenge. When we have high challenge and low invitation, you see that stressful, discouraged culture. That's where we're constantly pushing. We're creating standards, we're creating expectations, but we're not giving resources to do it, and we're also not giving acceptance and a way to fail. In familial language, I would probably call that kind of a demanding culture. And I think of like a drill sergeant dad who's constantly saying, this is the bar, reach the bar. I think a lot of, this is kind of a generalization, but a lot of Asian young people that I've grown up with would say that their parents have very high standards for them in life and for success. And so I'm not saying they're following this quadrant necessarily, but just saying that level of I believe in you, you can do this, so do it. Okay? That's high challenge. But if we don't have invitation, then we're always trying to achieve some sort of standard without that acceptance and love behind it, right? So it might be a child who says, okay, yeah, I always knew what was expected of me, but I never actually had a conversation with my dad that I thought he was really listening and really cared. And when we go to that high invitation, low challenge quadrant, we're talking about culture. We're talking about a consumer culture, a cozy culture, the kind of culture where 20% of the people do 80% of the work, probably even less. Let's say 8% of the people do 92% of the work. It's really fun and awesome for most of the people because they are consuming a product, but it's not sustainable and they're not becoming disciples. When we have high invitation, we say, we love you. You be a guest here. That means we're going to lay the table out for you. We're going to clean it up after you leave. We don't expect anything from you except on occasion to show up. There are 15 different small groups here of every different plan, and you don't have to see anybody you don't want to see. We've got free babysitting, so you don't have to actually care for each other's children. We've got all sorts of things here, all sorts of products that are. Now, I'm not saying any of those things are bad, but if we create a culture where people expect it, guess what we get? Spoiled, entitled children, who, when you finally do say, "Oh, actually, there's a family." So when you come, you need to bring something, or like someone's in need, so that means you need to do something to help. They're like, nuh-uh, that wasn't part of the deal. And nobody's ever told me no before. I'm not supposed to be disappointed with anything. I'm not supposed to be bored. I mean, man, when I was growing up, if I said I was bored to my parents, they were like, that's your problem. Find a solution. It's not my problem. I'm not going to stick something in front of you to entertain you. Go find something to do. There's a big world out there. And talk about having to wait for things. I'm one of 5 in 7 years, people. That means if there was something that I needed, I said, hey, Mom. She was like, it's either going to be a half hour or figure it out yourself. So I figured it out myself, you know what I'm saying? Like, we run circles around kids and give them every little tiny thing they need, and then we wonder how they grew up spoiled because we did everything for them. We never made them wait. We never wanted them to be disappointed. We never said no. And so they get their first job and someone says no, and they're like, well, you know. It's not their fault. It's the parents' fault. And as believers, as we're part of this family, I mean, there's challenge here. I hope you know. I hope you feel it. Like, that's the goal. We're not trying to, like, make anybody feel great all the time. I feel like crap sometimes. I mean, when Jesus comes around me, I took martial arts for 12 years. So I know the feeling of like, hey, Leila, you did that wrong. And guess what? Because you did that or stepped out of line, you're not going to do push-ups. The rest of the class is while you watch. I mean, they do things like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have to be like, oh, now everybody's really ticked at me. You know, like all these little tactics. I'm used to somebody saying yes, no, not good enough, try again, because there's invitation under it. You know? I'm perfectly happy with that. But if someone just was always feeding me what I wanted to hear, doesn't something feel wrong about that? I mean, it's nice and easy. It's cozy. And then we get spoiled. And then Jesus says something like, take up your cross and follow me. Which, you know, to us is like, oh, a cross. Right, that's that thing with the thing. But when he said this, they actually were walking by them with people still bloody on them. So that's called some challenge, you know. You know how Jesus did it was high invitation, high challenge. That's what we call a discipling, empowering culture. And that's what a family on mission looks like. And this is the reason that we end up with entitled, you know, whatever, is because we don't have high enough challenge. Because we don't have high enough challenge in our lives. And part of that challenge is, I was reading up on this because I should, because I have children. You know, how to not have your kids be entitled all the time. How to not have, I mean, Chase is still little, but seriously, you know, often he's like, but I want it. I'm like, in what universe did you think that mattered? That does not matter right now. Like, that's irrelevant to the conversation, what you want or don't want. You're taking a nap. Or like, nope, you're not having that. Or we didn't come to the store for you. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, it's amazing how many parents, I just saw this on the Summit County Moms Facebook page a couple weeks ago. I'm hardly ever on there, but I happen to be on there. And this woman was like, every time I go to the store, my daughter wants me to buy something for her. I mean, no matter what we're there for, I have to buy her a toy. What should I do? And I think she was expecting a really complicated answer or something. I'm not sure. But everyone who, pretty much everyone who went on there and responded, I noticed they were either older parents or from another country. And they were like, oh, say no. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you really want to be great, then tell her ahead of time. We're going, the answer's no. And if you ask me, you won't get that other thing either, you know? And then someone came back later and was like, yeah, but what if they pitch a fit? And again, it was almost like there's some deep, dark, okay, you're going to hold, this tiny little thing is going to hold you hostage everywhere you go. That's called entitlement, when I can because I should, because I want, right? And the way we get out of that in the family of God, every one of these little articles said gratitude, which I love, really. Gratitude is good, but it still focuses on me. To be completely honest, if I'm sitting there naming all my blessings, my world is still revolving around me. I think gratitude is an amazing thing. I just don't think in this instance it goes far enough. I think actually the answer is looking to others outside of ourselves. When people start to see that there's a world outside of us, we call that mission. We break the power of that entitlement in our lives. It's not that we want to have less invitation. We just want to have higher challenge. You know what I mean? So we're going to look at how Jesus did that. Now remember, Jesus was around during a time when they were very entitled. The Jews in his day felt very entitled. They were living under Roman rule, so they didn't have everything they wanted. But when it came to salvation and the favor of God, they were it. Nobody else really got it the way they did. And remember what oikos is all about. Oikos was the word for household, extended family, right? So grandparents, parents, aunts, uncles, you know all this by now. A huge network of people all living together. And the oikos existed for two things. What? Provision and protection. So remember, they didn't provide just for their nuclear family. Everybody pitched in some money because every oikos had a family business, right? And so it didn't make much sense if you met somebody who could really push forward your family business. It didn't make much sense to keep that, to hoard that to yourself. And that wouldn't make any sense at all. Because it's for the whole family's good that you tell someone about that and the whole family grows, you know? The family business thrives. So this kind of way that we think about things, I've even seen people here kind of hoard their relationships, their friendships. No, I worked super hard for that. No way am I going to bring that person around, let other people meet this person that I've worked really, really hard to get to know. Because here, friendships are difficult, right, to make, at least long-term ones. Because once you meet somebody, they're gone. So, I mean, even things like that, if we saw ourselves in terms of oikos the way they did, we could never do that because it's actually harming the oikos to hold those things back from it. Do you know what I mean? There was always a family business attached, but the oikos existed only for itself. This provision and protection was only for the oikos, not anybody else. Now, Jesus changed that. So let's look at Luke 4. Jesus has just seen a ton of fruit in Capernaum, and then we come to this. Jesus left the synagogue and went to the house of Simon. Now Simon's mother-in-law was suffering from a high fever, and they asked Jesus to help her. So he bent over her and rebuked her fever, and it left her. She got up at once and began to wait on them. Okay, so we've talked about this before. We're just going to go over it again. Jesus, remember, first went to his oikos, right? The very first place he goes after he receives this mission of God is to Nazareth, and we have a map, so you can just kind of see the baptism. We have to click it again, and then it goes up to the Nazareth. Yeah, now Nazareth is up there. So he goes right up to there. He tries to speak to his family. They don't take it well, okay? He barely gets out of there alive. It's not mob violence. It's an old-fashioned Old Testament stoning they try to do on him for heresy. So he goes to his own family because he thinks, I have credibility there. I have relationships there. I've grown up with these people. They know me. They know my family. It's a perfect place to start. And you think maybe he's assuming that the mission of God is going to come through his oikos. So he tries it. Doesn't work. So next he goes to Capernaum. Why does he go to Capernaum? Because he's met these 5 guys. Peter, Andrew, Simon, Andrew, John, Nathaniel, and Philip. They're all from Capernaum. So if you click it again, we go up to where Capernaum is. Here he is in Nazareth, and then he goes up to Capernaum. There's something. Maybe it's not working. So just above that. And so he goes up there to kind of, now he's met these people. He's found these disciples, or they found him, and he's going to now try to live off of their oikos. Okay? So if his is not really bearing any kind of fruit, he goes to the next best thing, which is the people that he knows. Let's go to their families and their hometowns because people know them. And what he's doing is immediately showing us, he's not really modeling it quite yet, he's experimenting with the person of peace strategy, right? So if we go back to verse 38 through the first part, he leaves the synagogue, he goes to the house of Simon. That word house is oikos. Now Simon's mother-in-law was suffering, so he goes there, he eats with, well, he can't eat with her because she's sick, so first he heals her, then he eats with them, and then he shares the good news. Those are the steps to finding a person of peace. Go to them, stay with them, eat with them, heal the sick, spread the good news. Okay? So we see him doing this here. She gets up and starts to wait on him. Then right after that, we see what happens next, which is, at sunset, the people brought to Jesus all who had various kinds of sickness, and laying his hands on each one, he healed them. Moreover, demons came out of many people, shouting, "You are the Son of God." But he rebuked them and would not allow them to speak, because they knew he was the Messiah. So, what he does after that, and I don't know what these guys must have been thinking when this thing was happening, okay? Because they're probably thinking, this is sweet. We've got this rabbi in here. He's here in our home. There's provision and protection going both ways. He's extending some spiritual capital. They're extending some financial capital. And relational capital is going everywhere. This is a good thing that's happening for us. Remember, oikos exists for them. And he says, actually, we're going to invite some people over. And they're going to look a little different. And some of them are going to have demons in them. And we're going to blast the walls off this oikos, and we're going to invite anybody in who wants to come, and we're going to see them set free. Because this oikos no longer exists just for itself. It exists for the mission for everybody else. He took Peter's oikos out on mission. It's amazing. Again, all of these things, it might be getting normal for you to hear these things, but I'm just telling you, in the American church, and probably in most of the Western church, we have no idea how to do any of this stuff together. No idea at all. Mark 2, I'm just reading it from the Message. It says, after a few days, Jesus returned to Capernaum, and word got around that he was back home. A crowd gathered, jamming the entrance so no one could get in or out. He was teaching the word. So he goes back to Capernaum, and word got around that he was back home. The NLT here says he goes back to the house where he was staying. But I love the way the Message puts it, back home. You know what that word is? Oikos. He goes back home. Now to whose home? He's not in Nazareth. He's in Capernaum. He's in Peter's home. And Mark has already started calling this Jesus oikos and Mark 2. Do you see how quickly Jesus has formed a new oikos? He's like, okay, that one's not really working. Now, he doesn't exclude his family from this new family. They exclude themselves by not wanting to be a part of it in the beginning. But he's creating something new. He goes back to his home, which is Peter and Andrew's home. And then this whole crazy story happens after, where these guys climb up onto the roof, and they dig a hole so they can let their paralyzed friend through so they can see Jesus, right? There's a whole story. And again, crowds have pressed into this oikos so that nobody can come in, and that's why they do this. We have a picture of a New Testament oikos. In fact, it's there's a picture there right after. It's what they think. It's kind of a reconstruction of what they think Peter and Andrew's oikos actually look like. Archaeologists believe they found it. There's some kind of like church meeting spaces sort of built around it, because throughout the centuries it turned into meeting spaces and things like that. But when they go down to the bottom, this is the best recreation they can make. And one of those is like a half wall so you can see inside. So they would come in through that door. That whole thing is their oikos. So you've got nuclear families and all those little buildings. They're emptying out into a courtyard, right? So that large meeting room there on the left from where you're looking at it would be something like where they were meeting with Jesus. And that whole thing was packed full. And in fact, that whole space was packed full. Now, those windows are open, so everybody who's out in that courtyard can hear what Jesus is saying. He's teaching. And his family comes around in Mark 3. This is crazy. His family comes in to find him and take him home. You can find this story in Mark 3, verse 20 and following. As he's teaching in either this oikos or another, they come to that probably outer wall right there where that doorway is, and they can't get in. That's how packed full this oikos was when he was teaching. And so they start sending word person to person until it gets to Jesus, and they say, hey, we're here to get him because he's gone crazy. I mean, he is saying all kinds of crazy things. Now, they're just being a good oikos. A good oikos goes and finds a crazy person and brings them home, so they can't hurt themselves or disgrace the family. They've heard the things he's saying, and at this point, they still are like, this dude's cuckoo. We know Jesus. We grew up with him. We're not buying what he's selling. And he says this unbelievably crazy thing. As he's sitting there, and word finally gets around, and they say, hey, your mom and your brothers are out there. They're looking for you. They want to take you home. And what does he say? Well, who are my mother and my father and my brothers and my sisters? They're like, duh, they're standing outside the door. I mean, there was no other way to think of family in that day than those biological people who surrounded you in oikos, all of that extended family. And he said, actually, I just need to redefine this for you. Because as you've seen family, it's in these natural connections maybe, but as I see family, it is whoever does the will of my Father are my brothers and mothers and sisters. He was saying mission, the mission of God has now kind of redefined what the family even looks like. If we are on mission together, then we are a family. That's crazy. That was just absolutely revolutionary. Now we can't wrap our head around it because most of us don't have family or not nearby. You know, it's just strange for us to think of how crazy that must have sounded to the people sitting there. He says, my family's invited to be a part of this new family, but I'm not going to base it on them. I'm basing it on the mission of God. Now, Jesus, every family in that day had a family business, remember? What was Peter and Andrew's? Fishing. What was Jesus's? Tecton, which is stone builders. Not as much wood carving as we think of. Stone builders, stone masons. And his heavenly family business is the kingdom of God. And basically said, I came, Luke 19:10, I came to seek and save the lost. That was my mission. Mission is always a who, never a what. Mission is not a what. What do I do? What's my cause? The mission is always a who. And Jesus said, my mission is the lost. Anybody who doesn't know God. All those people who are sick but know they're sick. Not necessarily the people who think they're okay. He came for everybody, but the way he extended it brought certain people in first. I love how he told the Pharisees and teachers of the law, these people are entering the kingdom of God ahead of you. He said, what we're going to do now, we're not going to all go out individually preaching all this stuff. Understand, none of this has ever been taught to me until recently. I have had way more formal Bible training than any person should ever need. Eric is like, do you want to get another degree? I'm like, no. What do I need? I mean, it's fun to learn, but only if you use it, in my opinion, you know? Like, unbelievable amounts of knowledge. And nobody has ever pointed out that Jesus did not send people on mission on their own. He sent them out as an oikos. He used even a family home, the most sacred, most safe space they had. The place that was created only for them. He said, it's not just for you anymore. Now think about it for a second. Are there things that feel like they're yours? And even if you gave up everything else, at least you have this space that's yours. Because honestly, Jesus basically says, nope. Whatever I have given for you to be blessed as a child and for you to be a blessing. And in the midst of that, oikos comes together and we start to use Peter and Andrew had to fix their roof. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like there was no cost to this. He literally is using their house and people are carving out a hole in their roof. It's such a funny thought for me to think. He's like, oh, your faith. And they're probably like, oh, man, we got to fix that hole in our stinking roof. I mean, it wasn't like our roofs. You know what I mean? It was like thatch and mud and, you could dig into it. Plus, there was a staircase leading up, so it's not the way we think of people climbing up a ladder on a roof, but still, it must have been a pain. Jesus had no trouble using all their things. All their things were at the disposal of the mission, because this is a family business. And if I have something to offer to the family that someone else can use for someone out there, that's the point. Now, when I just want to see it as my personal, individual thing, then whatever I have only goes as far as the people that are around me. And there are some times that we have way too many resources. I mean, most of our lives, we've had way, 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 way more than we need. And sometimes there are not the right people around us who need it. They might be the people around you. Know what I mean? God gives us these things to invest them in the family. And I don't mean, the 501c3 that we all get, together. We do this stuff together. We find out who those people are who are in need, or who those people are that we can say, man, you never had this sort of resource that I had. You never had an education in this way like I had. Let me give you a leg up so you're way beyond what I could do. I have a mentor who says our ceiling should always be the next generation's floor. Always. The next generation of leaders. I mean, there are not that many women who do the things that I do, and she's like, there should never just be one of me in a room. Because if nobody else is going to bring another woman, I will. Because there's no reason they should have to wait outside the door the way I did for 25 years before they get a chance. You know what I mean? Like, that's our job. The only way we can do that is to bring it all together and make it work together. So, we're going to talk about how missional purpose works. Now, we have a triangle for that, okay? I'm going to start making that like, that could be on our logo. We have a shape for that. So, just a reminder, the family on mission triangle. Remember, we have spiritual parents who then set the predictable patterns as we move out in missional purpose. So a few weeks ago, we talked about spiritual parenting. Then last week, we talked about predictable patterns. This week, we're talking about missional purpose. Under missional purpose, there are ways that we start to dig out what our personal purpose is. And the great thing is, once we discover it for ourselves, we bring it to the oikos, and we all do it together. Now, if we skip that part of doing it for ourselves, that's when we come to the oikos and we say, give me a job, give me a job. You know what? The job kind of materializes as we figure out the needs around us. We don't need to show up and say, somebody give me a job. Sometimes that happens. But most of the time it needs to come from what we feel like God is saying to us, which means we need to be listening. So as we look at family on mission, the up dimension of this is our passions. The in dimension is our possessions, and then the out dimension is the problems. And I want to just briefly talk about each of those. They're in your bulletin. And when we reflect in a couple of minutes over this, I really want you to take some time to even jot down some notes of things God might be talking to you. Because these are very, very personal. And they should be incredibly specific. And it might take some time to narrow it down. But it's you. It's you. Different than the person beside you. When we talk about passions, we're asking the question, what gets you up in the morning? What are the things that bring you joy and life and energy? What are the things that you say, hey, if I couldn't do anything else with my life, if I could do this, I would do it all the time. Maybe there are 2 or 3. Maybe there are 10, but really narrowing it down to a few is better. When I've done this, I've asked other people around me too, what do you think my passions are? If you had to name 3 things. And it's amazing the overlap. It's ridiculous. Right now, the only thing that I hear from any of my friends, and I'm not talking about people here, I'm talking about people that I talk to all the time, discipleship, oikos, family, leadership, the same words come up again and again. Because they have become kind of milestones of things that I'm passionate about. If I could do nothing else, what would I do? If you could do nothing else, what would you do? Possessions. Possessions are what are the tools that are in your hands? What are your resources? What do you have at your disposal? They're different than the people around you. And when we bring those things into the oikos, we get to use all of them. It's like I heard this story. Sorry, I'm going to say the story again about Isaac being in El Salvador. And Sarah bought him some tools. They're his tools, right? But before she knew it, everybody on the block is using his tools. And he's like, of course they're using it. This actually belongs to everybody. And that guy has a weed whacker, and that guy has a lawnmower, and that guy has probably didn't need a snowblower, I'm going to guess. But, it wouldn't make sense in a true neighborhood, true community for everyone on the block to own the same tools. Why would you need them if someone else has them? You bring them into the oikos and you share them, right? So why would everybody have a lawnmower on the same block? It just doesn't make any sense if you're living in oikos. And when we think about possessions, we want to be thinking through the 5 capitals, okay? Spiritual capital, love and power. And that's like prayer and stuff from the Bible and all sorts of stuff we can inject in each other. Relational capital, friends and family. Some of you have relational capital that's like going to waste. You have so much of it. It's fruit falling off the tree because you can't possibly take it and use all of it. Bring it into the oikos because someone else is kind of impoverished in that area right now maybe. Well, physical capital, time and physical health. Intellectual capital, knowledge and creativity. Knowledge is what we learn. Creativity is what we're given. We bring all those things in together. It's beautiful. And then financial capital, money. Jesus talks about all these capitals in the parables again and again and again. When we think about what we have to give, sometimes we go super spiritual with it. We forget, I have a really big backyard. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's all kinds of things that if you bring to the oikos and say, I have this resource, what can we do with it? We'll figure it out together. And then problems. Problems are what keep you up at night. If passions are what gets you up in the morning, problems are what keeps you up at night. What are the personal things that drive you crazy where the kingdom of God has not come yet? That's what we're asking. Where is the kingdom of God not come yet? Lots and lots of places. All we have to do is look around, and in a group this size, we could come up with 1,000 things right off the bat. But for you, what are the things that keep you up at night? Because they are different than with someone beside you. If you say, nothing keeps me up at night, then I would say, perhaps let's ramp up the missional outlook, okay? Because there's a lot of problems, there's a lot of need. All we have to do is open our eyes and talk to people. Just talk to a few people. And we start to get different perspectives in our lives. When we let our world expand a little bit outside of what we think, we start to realize there are a lot of problems. And the ones that specifically stand out to you, that are particularly painful for you, that matters. Because when you bring it all together, you find out, hey, I have a purpose. I have a purpose. Between these three things, God is showing me what I can bring to the oikos. Again, not what I can go run out and do on my own. If Jesus didn't send one person out to get donkeys, he's not going to send one person out to do mission. You know what I'm saying? 2 by 2 at least. As many people as we can do. We are to do this together, and I don't know how to do it. Nobody's ever shown me. I've never seen it modeled. I have no idea what I'm talking about, except that I can kind of see it in my mind. And I know that what I've been told so far is not how Jesus did it. He went in, he infiltrated in the most loving, amazing way possible an oikos. And he said, now take that and use everything you have to go out on mission. And the whole world was changed. 50% of the Roman Empire, which was huge, in a matter of centuries, knew Christ. Unbelievable. And so we have 30,000, something like that, permanent, year-round residents in Summit County. What can we do as an oikos, as a family on mission? Keaton, come on up. We're just going to take some time to kind of reflect on what God's saying to us. And there are notes on the back, and there is a little place, like I said, for you to just jot down some notes. If any of these passions, possessions, or problems are standing out to you, write them down right away. Because, this is the kind of thing that can sort of go through and go right out, go one ear and out the other, and we mean to do something with it and then never do anything with it. And so remember the 2 questions. What is God saying to me, and what am I going to do about it? What is God saying to me? What am I going to do about it? If we don't do anything with it, it does not matter. How are we going to do this together? I don't know. I don't know what it looks like, but I'm excited to see. It's the first time in my life that I will ever have seen an oikos go out on mission together is as we do this together. I'm super pumped to see what it looks like. It's going to be through you and me, but mostly you, because there's more of you in the room. And as we live into it and you bring all those things together, it's a beautiful thing. Lord, we are listening. We are open. And we're not taking away guilt. I know what it feels like to feel like we're supposed to be missionaries with no tools or resources at all. Or go reach people, and we have no idea which people. We are listening to you, and you've given us great tools. You've given us great ways to think through people of peace, and we know that we have each other and all this great stuff that you've given us. But ultimately, we just need to hear from you. And I do pray, Lord, that as we just think about the purpose that you've put us on this planet for, in different seasons, it may look completely different, but whatever it is today, whatever it is right now, whoever the people are that you're calling us to, we want to be faithful. We want to be open, we want to be listening, and then we want to do something about it. So speak to us, Lord. I'm just going to take a couple minutes to reflect, and then I'll come back and close us out for tonight.